All the rest of that is so smoke, like I'm getting next door.
You want the door closed or? I'm fine open.
I brought my very own.
Well, I did, so that's I left them all in like that. Anybody else?
Park board reports.
Oh, yeah, we go those. I'll save this till it's time, so we don't get
That's fine.
swimming in paper.
Okay. Hello, all of you. Some of you are going to talk to us, I guess.
Hello.
And some of you are going to be members of the board.
I'm just loud.
Is that what happens if you show up?
Well, we've had.
You're all board members now.
Sign up, yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
It being 5 after the appointed time, we should call the meeting to order, which I have just done. Does anybody have any additions they want to make to the agenda? Hearing no suggestions, the agenda is approved unanimously. Minutes, corrections, any approvals?
One comment, Steve,
Yes.
looking at the minutes in the golf report on line 5, I think it means serving strong beer and frozen pizzas, and not strong and frozen pizzas.
So the permanent record will be altered to reflect your suggestion. Does anybody
Small change.
object to that?
Significant.
I have one note, and that is where there was the discussion of golf carts.
Yes.
The minutes, I think I said something about asking Paul if he wouldn't mind doing a comparison of the costs and benefits of the gas and electric vehicles. So
Okay.
maybe you could add that to the.
Yep.
To the minutes as well, if there's no objection. I have to keep trying to remember who can vote here. 1, 2,
Three.
3.
No, no. 1, 2, 3.
4.
Okay.
You look like a visitor.
Take that.
All right. With those changes, are there any objections to approval of the minutes as submitted? Hearing none, they're approved. Business, public art request for space. Moheb Solomon and a poem of, do I pronounce it correctly?
Yes,
It's right, yeah.
yes,
Jew, okay, good.
yes. Thank you. Yeah.
A poem of sublime proportions. Do you want to start with the presentation, or is there somebody here who's going to? Oh, we should reflect for the minutes who our guests are.
Yeah, Ruth Pizzuaro, and I am artistic director of the Art Colony, and sitting here today because I'm on the Creative Economy Collaborative.
Jan Severson, Creative Economy Collaborative Chair.
Yeah, Joan Byram, Creative Economy Collaborative.
That's such a terrible name.
Say your name again.
Joan Barnum.
Thank you. I have very bad ears, and I'm going to correct the setting so I hear better.
Okay. I'm Ann Gratis. I'm also on the Creative Economy Collaborative. Did I get that right?
I don't know.
CEC.
And then we have our staff, Patrick, and our other staff, Dave. Okay, who's going to start? Will that be you, sir?
I'm happy to. Yeah, I can jump right into that. Is that the right step?
Mhm.
Sounds good.
Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, Moab, I can just take a minute so that you don't have to cold turkey jump in here.
Sure thing.
And just say that we're in the process. This is our first serious art proposal. And so we've built a lot of our process. But in the process, we've learned a lot of things we've missed. So kind of we're clunking along, and Mohab is been gracious enough to hang in there with us, but I think we're getting all the right places. So his proposal, the reason we're here before you, the park board, is his proposal is being proposed to take place in a park, in Boulder Park. Dave, you are familiar with the site. Ruth, you are familiar with the site. I'm not familiar with exactly the site, but anyway, so Moab is going to present his proposal for this site in the park, and that's why we're bringing it to you for your approval and or suggestions and or help for us in the future to make this process good, streamlined, and that we can all be proud of.
What's been identified as the place it might go?
Boulder Park, which is that open space between the downtown and like the Superior Trading Post. Like Superior Trading Post is kind of sits in that corner. But then as you travel south towards the Coast Guard station and the parking lot, we have this piece of land known as Boulder Park, where the portable restroom trailer sits on the parking lot side of things across from the custard shop. But then in the front of that, there's that open space there's a little sculpture already, a Wayne Travis canoe sculpture. Was gifted to the city years ago on that edge between the open cobblestone and the boulders and the trees. And now in particular, we're, I think, looking at the shoreline of this park where there's an old retaining wall, an old sheet piling wall. And that sort of transitions into the corner of right at the trading post, there's big boulders, like a rip-wrapping sort of shore protection. And so, yes,
And what would be built there?
well, that's for Mo to describe.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to jump in. So yeah, hello everybody. I'm just really enjoying this really long view of you all. It's like a Last Supper scene here. I don't know if you can see that, but anyway. So yeah, I mean, I'm here with a proposal. You're looking at it, and I'm happy to share my screen and go through that entire thing with you. There are a lot of big ideas there, a lot of background on myself, my professional experience as a public artist, and just also working professionally with the city and organizations producing public art. There are a few slides that kind of just really give you what I feel like is really just the heart and soul of this project, and what kind of has led me to this point through like a 10+ year career, specifically working on projects that are in and about and around and just with Great Lakes communities. But I also kind of feel the need to maybe just try to jump in with some really practical pieces here, as was just asked, so what is literally going to be built there? And I know that with the CEC, we've just tried to have a pretty detailed process and kind of talking about the technical and logistical parts. So, I'd sort of would just be happy to jump in anywhere. But I think just for the sake of, my own logic, I'm just going to pull up my presentation so you can look at that with me instead of, looking at me talking at you here. So just give me 1 second. I can see if I can actually share my screen. Okay. Okay, so you might be looking at, whoops.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, sounds good. I'm just not sure how 1 second, I'm sorry. Let me just try this one more time. Okay, yeah, it's sort of confusing how I would move from slide to slide here. Here, let me do this. Here we go. Is that moving now for you?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just going to go, there's a big picture here. And I think I might actually just even come back to that, because what I'm trying to produce in Grand Marais by next summer is, a really kind of simple piece that really gets a lot out of its larger concept. And it's something I'm hoping to reproduce over the course of a few years, the exact same piece, the exact same process of community involvement and engagement, and to try to replicate that in 20+ communities all around the Great Lakes that are, similar in various ways to Grand Marais. This is the first one that I'm working on, and I can, talk a little bit more about that. But the reason this is a poem of sublime proportion is quite literally, it's meant to be a poem that's scattered all around the Great Lakes. You can see, a map up there of possible locations where I've done previous work. Each of these places would have one line of a poem that's developed in collaboration with the community. So that's why it's a poem of sublime proportion. It's coming off of the page and it's living on driftwood, and it's quite literally circling the entire region as a poem. But specifically, what am I, hoping to accomplish in Grand Marais? So over the past year and into next year, I have a few pretty concrete steps for how this project will, come to be. You can, see a tiny image there of one rendition of what this could look like. But I just really do need to stress that, it can change according to the parameters and needs of, all the stakeholders. It just really makes sense when you're, pitching a proposal to just really give one simple concrete vision of a project, knowing that, anything that happens in, public space necessarily evolves and needs editing and reworking for a lot of reasons. So yeah, I have 2 grants that I received for this project, Minnesota State Arts Board, Minneapolis Regional Arts Council. These are kind of the funding that I'm really hoping will accomplish every component of this project. My local partner, sort of my sponsor, or really my core partner here is Marais Art Colony, which is why we have Ruth here. Someone who I've worked with for years and years, and same with the Art Colony, and the public library, and varied other relationships that I've built in the community. So the real simple kind of nuts and bolts here is it's sourcing local materials and local language to create a sculpture that's just, very simply made of a giant piece of driftwood and emblazoned onto it. It might be carved, it might be embedded metal. There are, different approaches to, that component of the project, but there'll just be one sort of giant line of the poem. Over the last few weeks, I've, secured a really, really incredible collaborator, which just, really kind of changes so much about this project. And that's Jim Sunnerud, who's a local sculptor that I feel like so many people know. And that's a really important part. I don't produce the sculpture. I'm not a fabricator, and Jim has that experience. So, without that, it would be really impossible. Another crucial component, of course, is the site, and that's why I'm here before you today. In having connected with the CEC back in April, I was fortunate enough to connect with Richard Olson, who's a member of that committee, and he has a really long history with Harbor Park and Boulder Park, and we took a long walk and kind of just discussed this project and possible locations for it. I was very open really to just what is possible. I don't feel like I'm really fixated on one particular location or one particular kind of approach to the installation. But again, just to really be able to present a clear, strong vision. I'm really excited to have landed on a site that seems possible. I'm also just, really capable and willing to adjust quite literally within that site where this thing goes, how it physically is installed. Jim and I were talking about the idea of almost recreating a pile of riprap, which is giant boulders. Because in storms, so many times you see something so similar to what the sculpture is kind of trying to evoke, a huge tree that, storms and, Lake Superior has wedged into the riprap that we have on a lot of, parts of that shoreline. So there really are numerous ideas, but to me, I just find it really evocative to create something that it stands in the air. It really kind of draws attention from afar. The poem, the line of the poem that's going on this line needs to be big so that people can kind of see that this isn't just a natural item that's been wedged into place, but there's something more deliberate going on. Yeah, maybe I should just jump to talking about the very first point that you're looking at here. So part of what I'm excited about, and this is something I've done with a lot of, other projects in my practice, is just finding a way to, I feel like in a sort of, very genuine way, work and incorporate the community into artwork. And I think that's a very popular thing that people say, and there's a lot of gestures towards that. And I'd like to think I found, a kind of really concrete way to make a gesture, kind of like collective consciousness of Grand Marais and the area, and try to draw something really core to that. And then, I'm then mandated to use that piece of the, community's input into the work itself. So you can see in bold here that the goal is to try to get 200 plus people from Grand Marais or from the region. And that doesn't just mean, year-long residents. It really is just, folks who have a relationship and a presence and who come through to contribute 4 words that capture or describe their corner of the Great Lakes region. So it's trying to put Grand Marais in the context of a much larger, ecologically coherent region, right? The Great Lakes is actually one lake, it's one body of water, it's one watershed. And yet it has so many different communities, so many different histories, so many different, economies all around it. So to try to ask people to give 4 simple words that they feel really evoke this corner of the region, and then to take those words and aggregate them. We're looking at 800 plus words, and 200 people is, in a sense, a statistically significant percentage of the population. It's 10% by various measures of what population means, right? And we know that that really changes a lot for summer folks and everything. But again, it's just kind of an attempt to really be representative, to work not just with one set of the population, but really reach into various partners that you see listed here, and work with them to reach their demographics. You have someone who works with elderly members of the community, someone who works with youth, someone who does a lot of outdoors and, skilled arts workers. Of course, Grand Marais Art Colony is connected to a whole set of populations. So library. I want to be able to pool from these folks words that I can then bring together, see which words rise to the top, and then I'm mandated to use those words in a line of a poem. I'd love to talk more, and I can tell you, this kind of stuff fascinates me. Like, how do you build a poem with 20 different communities? What's the structure of the poem? Is every line, does it start with the same, phrase? So it's a declarative kind of poem, and it doesn't need to connect strictly. I've got a lot of strategies, through my own practice and other work that I've done that I think can really lead to a really stimulating, project and product here. So this is what I'm presenting to you most concretely. I think I could just kind of flip forward and just show you real quick in case you haven't had time to look at this. I've got some of my own personal background professionally. There's a paragraph there about kind of my own independent arts practice. I both practice, art and poetry and public art independently, and then I also work professionally in that regard. This is kind of that big picture about how did this project come together? For how long has this been, in development? How long has it been a dream? And this was just kind of a real rough attempt to just kind of give some real basics to what are we talking about when we're looking at this object. I wanted to share also, one of the very recent updates actually is Jim found I think he said it was like 12 or 15 foot driftwood that, is like accessible and available. And it's something we might just go ahead and grab and hold in his studio, because it seems relatively possible and easy just to do that so we don't lose it, so that we can just kind of have a backup object. And I just was so excited to see, this is obviously one of the biggest challenges of this project. Where am I going to get this thing? I've got a lot of strategies about that. Working through Richard, working through Jim, working through other folks, my own, time spent researching, putting out a call, all that kind of stuff. But, it's a big challenge to secure this kind of object. It's a big challenge to find a really incredible, talented artist. It's a big challenge to be able to make connections with, someone like Dave and be able to just kind of candidly talk about this kind of work and see what's possible for it. So I just feel hopeful that, the pieces are coming together. And there's a lot more that needs to, of course, be determined. And, that's what I'm here for. That's my job. That's this work. But yeah, you see here that what I'm hoping is maybe something that's like 15-foot visibility. That's pretty big. That makes an impression. Not much transformation, really. It's really basic. The line is carved into it. And then, of course, there needs to be a didactic, and you see that rendered here. It could look like a lot of different things. This is just a rendering. Because this project needs explanation, and it needs the dream and the vision and the hope for it. And, all of that, the map, something like this being on the plaque. These are really important pieces to making this work legible, quite literally and metaphorically, to the public. I'd be happy to talk a lot more, but I've been talking a lot, and I don't know, maybe I should open this up to questions, or if anybody from the CEC wants to jump in, or, maybe also Dave. I haven't really properly kind of, spoken about the site, or, that's something you want to do. You and I have talked about, of course, the contingency of, there might be future work at this location that's called Boulder Park, right? We don't know how many years that might be in. I would love this piece to last 3 to 5 years, but in speaking with Jim, sorry, someone talking?
Sorry.
I apologize. I just was talking over folks. Anyway, I just was going to say real quick, in talking with Jim about the durability and the longevity, just physically, of this object, it seems very reasonable to create something that can hang for 3 to 5 years and more, if possible, with approval, of course. The duration of the project is in an effort to be able to continue to mount other pieces around the region, so that there's a sense of this multi-site public art installation existing all around the Great Lakes coastline at the same time. That somebody could go a few hours to Bayfield and see a piece. They could go up around to Marathon in Canada and see another piece. When you have just that simple experience of, like the project, even just in terms of like a few components, I think that really is a thrilling, like, manifestation of, imagining this really existing and living like all around the 10,000 plus miles of this coastline. So it's a really big project. It's a really ambitious project. And, I'm just so happy to like actually have a shot at working at it with funding and with partners. So yeah, I'd love to talk in conversation.
Why don't you folks add what you'd like to add at this point, if anything? I don't insist. But
I would just say, as this outlines, again, confirming, since 2016, the CEC has been appointed the Arts Advisory Council to the city. And so that's where this whole process is being built out of. So Mohab has taken the steps here of applying with the application that's on the city site, coming to the CEC. The CEC gave a majority vote to his project, and then it's the city entity. So that's where we're at in the process. I would just add that as we go through this, on the front end, Mohab needed a sponsor to even apply for State Arts Board funding and put this process forward with the State Arts Board, and that's the Art Colony. And so his preference is that he's looking at a public art site. You want to speak?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's such an obvious thing to say. I mean, this thing could like live in somebody's backyard, and I can say it's accomplished. It's public art. It's meant to be in a place that's publicly accessible, that people think of as common space and the commons in general. And that's just why it's so exciting to think about the possibility of having this live for a few years in Boulder Park. And if that didn't happen, there are multiple other pathways to realize this. There are quite literally dozens of businesses that have shoreline or shore adjacent property, right? Somebody could put it in their parking lot. I think it's really a sweet idea to have this object within viewing distance of the lake, so that you're really experiencing that sublime body of water while you're, working with this object. But shoreline communities and towns like yours have just so many spaces for that. You know, at the very, very least, it could even just live in front of, you know, Studio 21, right there by Grand Marais Art Colony. And that's a public space too. Is it an ideal space for people to really spend time with art and to think about the relationship of places that are thousands of miles across the water? I think there's an argument for no. And I think there's also an argument for people, you know, I think in our time expect and really relate to public artworks living in spaces like parks. And, you know, of course, in your harbor park, you've got a couple of pieces. So, you know, yeah, that's why I'm just really excited about this prospect. I also think Boulder Park is, like, in a really wonderful way, kind of strategic, because it's not front and center. It's a real kind of transient space. And, you know, Dave could maybe speak to that more. You know, I'm not there every day, but I'm there plenty. It feels, I really like that it's on the side, it's off to the side, it's not blocking views, it's not occupying really precious space. It doesn't interrupt that, you know, kind of sweet landscaping that you guys have in Harbor Park. There's also the very other side of Harbor Park where there's riprap, you know, where there was construction for a bit there. You know, that's an interesting space. But my point here is just, you know, I love the idea that this thing lives in the periphery and not in the center, and that someone might catch it out of the corner of their eye and, you know, think initially that it's just a big log that's been tossed on shore, and then go explore it, you know, on their way to the point or on their way back from the point. So that's why it's, I'm excited about that spot. But, you know, this can live in other places and in other ways. It's just, I want to be able to present an ideal vision to you.
I have a response. Hi, I'm Ann Bradis, and I spent 4 months last summer in that very spot. I had a public letter writing park on the deck of Lake Superior Trading Post, and I stood there. There's no interior space. So I was out there every day, 10 to 6. And I see that this is major egress and access right by those boulders. That is a gateway experience of coming into Grand Marais, because people park at the Coast Guard parking lot. And I can tell you what they do. They come in and they actually see Lake Superior Trading Post, and they see my letter writing park. And here's one problem I have with this. My letter writing park is a new concept. I have to explain it to them. I am a docent. I'm there every day. Yours is even less accessible than mine. Yours is, would you agree? It's edgy, it's challenging, it's art.
Yeah, I would. I mean, yes, I agree. It's art. I'm not sure what that means. I'm
All
sorry.
right. It means, okay, people come in here, they're walking through that dirt path. As they approach the trading post to the left, there are these collection of boulders.
Wait, and I'm sorry, Anne, can I just stop you for a minute and say, I just need to say again, this is just to be able to present a possibility. I just really fear being intractably kind of pegged to this exact location. It is very much in partnership with folks here. I just really need to make sure I emphasize that. And I appreciate the work you surely have done there. I'm not trying to step on that project.
No, I need you to know how that land is used. Nobody at this table has watched that land as much as I have. And that, I think, if you'd like to challenge me, please do. But I know how that is used. So if you're not using that land, that's fine. I'm just saying, please consider. I don't hear you thinking of the kids scrambling over the boulders. They're excited. They've been in the car. Everybody climbs a rock when they get into Grand Marais, and everybody throws a rock. That is it. If there's a 15-foot log, that is in the way. Anyway, I'm just giving you some feedback of a dimension that most people haven't experienced of how that land is used. And I have watched it. I'm on the bay this year. I'm not on the harbor. So that's used differently.
I'm really happy to explore that with Dave. I'm happy to explore that entire site and think about strategies for anyway.
Yeah.
How does what he's talking about relate to what you just said? It wasn't clear to me.
It's just that I see the way that space is used every day in the summer, and it's used a lot. It's a major access point into the city because people park at the Coast Guard parking lot, and their families, and their people with strollers, and their people with walkers, and they use a path that right now would be under this log. So we would have to.
Not necessarily.
Mohab, I get it that this is mutable. He just asked me a question. One scenario today, if you walk that path and if this illustration were there, you likely would have a log.
So you're saying that what you're concerned about is that the structure would be right in the path, and the question
Or
is,
nearby. Yeah.
is there a place where it can be where it would fit?
Exactly. And it wouldn't impede the gateway experience. This is a gateway experience to Grand Marais. It's very sweet and humble. It's just a dirt path right now. And if there were, too many things in the way, that would alter people's use pattern. In city planning or park planning, I believe they call that a desire path, where people make their own path where it makes sense to how to get to a place. And that's what this is. Nobody made it. This is like a cattle trail, a deer trail. And everybody uses it to get to Grand Marais, who parks in that parking lot.
Or like the tracks across Central Campus that weren't accounted for ahead of
Right.
time?
Exactly. That's a desire path.
Or the rounds on, like when sidewalks meet, there's this path that goes like this. and
Yes.
People go on it.
Those are desire paths. That's what we have here. That's where people desire to go. It makes sense.
Who else would like to comment at this point from the CEC?
I just want to say that this discussion of location came in late in our process, and it's raising a lot of issues. So now we realize how important it is to link it to a location for your approval, and before we bring it to anybody. And so we would like to link it to Boulder Park, or possibly another location within the park board's review, perhaps, or even just to give your feedback to the proposal would be helpful today.
Yeah.
Because we still have to, it's like the process for us to link the location to the vote. We have to go back and vote on this too. So it would be really helpful to us, having just heard his presentation, to really get your take on his proposal.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
We need more information. I love your input, and Ruth, you have something to add.
Did you want to add anything, Ms. Farnham?
Eventually I might.
Okay. I did note one thing in the
Yeah.
flow chart you have here. I think probably the park board has to be in there between the CEC and the city council.
So we were confused because there was talk of both the park board being able to actually vote and not needing to bring it to the city council. So this is part of this building this process.
Until the city delegates that authority for us for this project, I suspect we have to assume both us and the council will be involved. Yeah.
Okay, that was
That's
in
really good and
conversation.
helpful. We will change that.
Mhm.
That's what we hope to get out of this process. is very
And what are you hoping to get from us today by way of an action? Is simply to pay attention and wait for something more to happen? Or is there more to it today?
I would like to hear from you to see if this would be an amenable project to you.
Yes, please.
We were looking for a vote. I think that's what we're trying to see. Is this a vote from the park board or just input from? I mean, one of the questions is, would Mohab have to come back to the park board for a final vote?
I think we're unlikely to vote today
Yeah.
on something that is yet so conceptual. We know what you hope for with the funding, but we don't know what the funding is going to actually be until somebody says, yes, we're going to pay for it. I assume that the artists are going to get paid something.
So he's got funding through 2 grants. And so Mohab's project will go through this year, no matter what. It will either be installed on Grand Marais public city property, or it will be installed on private property. It's going to happen either way. And his timeline is going to go forward,
And that's true for both him and the sculptor.
right?
So the money that you would be seeking would be the installation money.
No,
No,
You already
No,
have-
I'm sorry. I really, don't want anyone to feel, I really don't mean to be in any way like onerous on the city. I wouldn't be able to even come here and talk to you without funding already secured, in my opinion. So I've got funding to cover, for example, a fee for Jim Sunnerud. I've got, the grants that I have, I've built this project to fit within that budget. Really what I need and I guess what I would really love is public support through the likes of committees like yours, the park board, the CEC, so that it doesn't, live privately. It's a public concept and it's a public project. So, this is why I'm trying to kind of go above and beyond and really shoot my shot with putting it in a place like a park in Grand Marais versus, a private lot. I just feel there's a lot more power. Think about the canoe sculpture in Boulder Park. Think about the bear, that really iconic Grand Marais bear sculpture that you have in Harbor Park. These are like really beautiful, subtle, just unique characteristics of this city that are way more permanent, of course, than what I'm talking about here. But when something lives in that kind of place, it's really meaningful. So this is why I'm trying to kind of, pursue the park as I can.
well, if you can't get it approved for the city itself or some private place, perhaps the golf course could do it.
Yes.
We could
Yes.
sculpture out there.
Oh, the golfers would love this thing. Golfers would love this. Although that does make me think that they would be a great population to source some language from. So I will try to pursue that.
I
Questions from members of
Yeah,
the board?
two things. One, I need a little clarification because I thought the CEC was coming to us with a recommendation for installation of this on public property, but it doesn't, but then I'm hearing that you still have to vote.
We have voted. We've got to go back now and link it to the location.
Oh,
And so we've mostly voted in favor of this. And I have a feeling that I can't really speak to those who have voted in favor, but I think we will still have a majority once it's linked to a location. In fact, I think people now having it linked to a location, particularly this location, are even more in favor of it.
okay.
So,
Okay,
so with that,
That's
that's as
helpful.
good as I can get.
I wish we had a specific location, but I'd like to hear a little more from you, David, about conversations you've had with
Sure.
Mohab about possible locations.
Right, yeah, of
Thank-
course.
Thinking through this.
Yeah, so this came up in, I would say, late June. Was it June or July we met Moab?
Early June.
Yeah, early June, sort of at the direction of the CEC, there was this like the review and the preliminary, where should it go? Well, they toured with Richard Olson, like you mentioned, and then was like referred to me because it was our space. And so we met at the Studio 21 and had this pretty open discussion, took a look at these materials, discussed the possible, either Harbor Park or Boulder Park was really the two that were identified in the initial tour with Richard Olson, which I wasn't a part of, but I'm very familiar with these locations. So I said, yeah, Harbor Park is just too precious. Like
Totally.
It's a scenic vista. Let's not consider Harbor Park, but Boulder Park. Now there's a blank slate. There's a piece of public land that's right on the lake that's sort of open for ideas, and that it's, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how the park board feels, was kind of the general discussion between us in June. Was not any conclusive, like it's going to go in Boulder Park. It was if this lives anywhere, Boulder Park might be the place, but we need to run it by the park board. We need to run it by the city council.
Okay, I guess I have to ask one more question about the model, the design. To me, it looks like it's just coming out of the ground, like a rocket. I mean, is it?
It's into the ground is the idea.
It's into the ground. There's not, because there was talk about
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry. Yes, yes. I was just kind of overcompensating and trying to offer some other ideas. Ideally, what would happen here with the professional work of Jim Sunnerud, of course, is this trunk, let's say we have a 20-foot object, a 15-foot object. It's sunk stably enough through a footing to where it looks like it's just sticking out like a storm through it into the earth. But it's secured with, for example, maybe an iron rod that's secured through a footing. There are multiple approaches to, sort of logistically engineering this object.
Okay.
So that is the dream for it.
Dave, do we have authority over Boulder Park?
We do.
It's not the same land as the rest of the park, right?
It's not the same as Harbor Park.
It doesn't have the,
The conservation.
doesn't have the conservation.
It does.
agreement,
Actually, Boulder Park does.
does it?
Does that mean we have to get the approval of the people that are related to the conservation agreement, which is state,
Minnesota, it's a land trust. The Minnesota
the
Land
land
Trust.
trust, okay,
But again, this would be like pending our approval.
right.
And
So we would need to insert in your flow chart then, a request the land trust before we come to us, I suppose.
But that isn't land trust land.
it is,
Oh, I didn't know that.
I thought Boulder Park was separate from the rest of it.
it's in the land trust, but it's in a separate parcel of like section E.
Oh.
Yeah, this is.
Three quarters of an acre.
Dave, I have a question. What about the condo owners? They're very near this too. They would be impacted. No?
We haven't discussed that.
Okay. Is there an obligation to, because they're within feet of this, if this is I realize this is not settled, but if this space were designated, that condo is within feet of this traffic, and then what would be people having an art experience?
That's that's a really good point, actually. I was going to, if you don't mind me real quick sharing my screen again, I just have Google Maps up. I just feel like we need to kind of get a really clear sense of what this space is. It's fairly large. And let me just share my screen again and just show you what I'm talking about. So window again. Okay, here we go. So, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, but what we're looking at right here, this whole thing is what they call Boulder Park, right?
Correct.
So, these are the condos. This is the Desire Path. This is where, right here is the canoe. Oh, shoot. I'm sorry. That thing right there, I believe, is probably the canoe sculpture, or that's fairly close to where it is. It just is important to me to point out, there's really a lot of space here to work with that really minimizes intrusion. And that is important to me, not just to be respectful, but I really believe that this project is most interesting when it's out of the way. If it really looks like a sculpture and it's dead center, it loses some of its impact, so it's just interesting for me to think about where it could go. And that strategically lines up, hopefully, with concerns that might exist about blocking view paths, right here, there's not really that much of that. There's less of that intrusion.
So if I understand it correctly, what you're looking at is generally the area between the path and those trees that are just north or just up above the parking lot there.
Yeah, and you're right. Short answer, yes, and long answer, whatever works.
I think the thing that you should probably consider is, number one, placement of it on that 3/4 acre piece of land, and also the height of it.
Yes.
And for me, making it look like it's a natural kind of occurrence, I don't really that doesn't look this, I understand this is your concept and this is your art and I get it, but it doesn't look natural to me. I think a more lower profile piece of driftwood
Yeah,
or whatever mass that you have, you know, whatever it may be, with the writing that you're going to put on it, the words that you're going to put on it. I think about it being a perch for seagulls.
yeah,
You may not consider that it is a major problem we have. We're going to
Yeah.
wash our streets now because the seagulls have
Ooh,
been so bad.
sure, sure.
On the lights around town, stuff like that. So I mean, things like that just kind of impact the whole.
Seagulls purchase on driftwood generally, don't they?
Well, anything sticking up in the air is
Yeah,
going to
they
be
do.
nested on, or yeah. Anyway, I just think that visually, the height of it, where it's going to be, like the canoe thing. I know that's set back. Maybe it's set back too far because a lot of people walk by it. Though.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Yeah,
Could have been maybe brought up.
Well, maybe
Not out in the middle of the parking lot, but slid over maybe kind of by the path or whatever. But that's just one thing I notice when I'm down there. Anyway, that's my
thank
first,
you.
my first look at it is, you don't want it to look out of place, but yet you want it to be visible when you want people to notice it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you.
Right now.
Thank you.
Well, my question for Dave, you know, I know we went through the whole master plan and things like that, and I don't recall, was Harbor,
Mm-mm.
Boulder Park on there at all?
No, and that's what we've been talking about, I think, for several years, is that this entire area from Boulder Park on south is city land and needs this same kind of master plan, community visioning, community input on what should we do with this space.
Oh, good.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's great.
We know we've been experimenting with this portable restroom trailer in the space. That's, I think, proven itself not the right idea, but you know, Columbia restrooms, yes. So
Fortunately, it has wheels.
yeah, but
Yeah, right.
no, so the Rex Park master plan last year was strictly the campground, the marina, on the west side. Okay. Didn't include Boulder Park, didn't include Coast Guard parking lot. The wall itself is all city property. The
Wow.
Coast Guard station is not city property yet. And so that's maybe why there's been this hold to plan that whole entire section of town, right? Because we're all just waiting to find out what's going to happen in the Coast Guard facility. And if and when we find out, we get on the planning bus and ask the community, what should we do with this super prime property?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And we've been dabbling. We had the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative came to us this spring, and we did a little plan in this very corner of Boulder Park because of the shoreline erosion and the impacts by waves and climate change, right? They've like put together a little plan for us to, if we would like to pursue, we need to fund it and design it and, you know, engineer, but it's on a shelf because it's expensive and it's not vetted through the community.
Millions expensive or 100,000s expensive?
It depends on the scale and it could be millions. If we fix the break wall itself and create more transient dock space
Oh, boy.
and do a bandstand for events.
Wow.
Okay, so there's a minimum and there's a maximum
Yeah.
one night that might happen.
Yeah. But because this land is so prime and so open right now, I feel the need to step back and plan with the community.
Yeah.
Well, we gotta leave room for the tourists to walk.
True.
Or park. Or not.
Well, we put rocks in there to keep the parking away because of the canoe getting back and doing hit with the vehicle. That's why there's big rocks going through there. But I do notice that the picnic tables that we have scattered down there, 2 or 3, maybe
Yeah.
4,
Yeah, it's
they
pretty.
get used
Mhm. Yeah, they
because
do.
of the parking and people have children and picnics and those kind of not a place to go sit. So
Yeah.
that open space is kind of nice.
Yep.
Or,
It's used.
For being open.
yeah, for the
Okay.
parking and, you know, it's a,
Yeah.
So
we
Dave,
just
for that
wonder-
area there, though, you said Boulder Park, it is on the same rules as Harbor Park, so still no structures and things like that.
No, it's actually because of the land trust and section E that it's under, does allow for new structures, does allow for change.
Okay.
as long as we protect the conservation values of the easement, development can happen with
I think a lot of people would say.
land trust review.
Yeah.
You had a comment? I thought I saw your lips moving for a moment.
Oh, I talk to myself all the time.
I think there's a few
Do you
distinctions to be
understand?
made here.
I have one more thing I want to
sure.
just say about the fact that this is a temporary project, fits in with, any sort of planning for Boulder Park's not gonna happen. I mean, the planning could happen, but
Mhm.
it's 3 to 5 years or
I-
it's not a barrier. I don't see this as a barrier to
Well,
any sort
and
of.
I was feeling just the opposite. We're gonna do all this work. You're gonna do all this work. The communities are gonna do all this work, and it's gonna be gone in 3 to 5 years. My sense is that if we can figure out a way to make it last longer, that would be better. Although things be.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to speak to that too. It had come up, I think possibly, I can't remember if it was through Ruth or Ann's comments, but in a separate CEC exchange, but the idea that, of course, sculptures are movable. If for some reason, if this gets approved, it lives there for 5 years, you all come up with a really exciting plan for Boulder Park, and there's enough of a desire to keep the sculpture going because, wow, amazing, my larger project is actually happening in numerous other communities around the region. We can move it. That's totally great. That would be amazing.
And I will say that was the caveat with the sculpture, with the canoe sculpture from Wayne Traps, that it was gifted to the city. The city council then gets involved because it's this gift and, perpetuity that we would, we own it. But we told, and, Wayne was very specific that he wanted it right there because it's, the piece is entitled like camping
Culture
on
and
the edge.
nature.
Yeah.
On the edge of nature and cult, yeah.
So he loved that like interface right at that spot.
Beautiful. It's
And so
beautiful.
we put it on a thin slab that's mobile. And he agrees to like
Oh.
moving it as needed.
Ooh. It would be so nice if it was on a little taller pedestal, which would declare to everybody walking by, there's something to look at here.
Again, Wayne was bid on the found
Hmm.
art bus.
Yeah.
Like it's best like stumbled upon.
Oh, okay.
I remember one time I was there, and I don't know if kids had been playing, but somebody had done a really good job of covering that metal base with rocks. And it made that piece so much more amazing because it really looked like this canoe was sitting there. That was really cool.
What you've designed to some extent is a giant circle tour of all the Great Lakes.
Yes.
It would be wonderful for tourism. That suggests that at every location, you need to tell the world that this is part of something bigger. And if you want to see it all, just set aside 6 months of your life.
Oh, yes. I'm going to give it 8. Give it 8.
It's worth it. It's really 6 months. And,
It would make going around the North Shore of Lake Superior a little bit more
Yeah.
interesting.
And to that note, Linda Jurek, Visit Cook County, was very excited about this project. She thought that with her marketing skills, that this would enhance her marketing ability to the uniqueness of Grand Marais. So there's that vote of confidence from Visit Cook County as well.
So today, if I understand it correctly, you have our reactions. There may be more. I don't mean to cut them off, but we can wait. We can read your things in more detail, and that will have that background when you come back to us with something that's more final. Am I hearing that right?
I think what we're after today is a yay or nay on Boulder Park for a location.
I just, and if it's flexible, I mean, with the idea that it really can be flexible within that entire space, just to emphasize that.
I'd make that motion to,
It's been moved that we designate Boulder Park in its totality as a place where a sculpture with a poem on it might go.
no, that's not my motion.
I thought that's what you said.
No, I think my motion is that we recommend or would accept a site in Boulder Park for this project, subject to appropriate location as decided by sensitive parties.
I love it. You can
That's
even name
you.
names.
Does somebody want to second the motion as stated? Okay. Is there any discussion?
Is there any flexibility on how it's gonna look? Because I think something sticking 20 to 30 feet up in the air is gonna be a hard sell to some people in this community.
If I understand what he said is there are multiple ways this might be accomplished, and this was more of a concept than a precise proposal. Am I correct about that?
You are correct, and I do have to say, in speaking with Jim Sunnerud about the logistics of it and just the driftwood, it's definitely very ambitious that we would be able to locate something as large as I rendered. The power of the image kind of is, meant to kind of show something spectacular. I really expect it to be smaller. As far as the actual, installation, the concept of something sticking out of the ground, that's something I really do want to move forward with, and I can give more reasoning beyond that. But I would never do that without actual collective approval from, stakeholders. At this moment, I really think it would be such a huge move forward to just have a site to then start thinking about the technical logistics of installation and so much more that really comes out of saying, okay, we have 50 square feet we're going to think about here, or 100 square feet or 200 square feet.
Steve, could I add?
I was going to ask if there was any public response to the
Sorry.
proposed motion.
What, just the final step, which makes so much sense for you to bring up, is a contract. Like so in this whole process, the next step after approval is this contract that would include the things like you're talking about, who's responsible for the maintenance, and that's partly on the CEC agenda as far as having a template, having a sample, and helping the city to work through that.
Who do you
So,
think is going to be drafting the contract?
well, I think that's part of this process we're hammering out, but it's been on our list to do in conjunction with the city. Is that correct, Jan?
Yeah. Yeah, because I really, our purpose is to vet fabulous proposals, to create this process that gets all the stakeholders to buy in and say yes or no, and to have something that Grand Marais can be proud of, that offers a benefit to the community. So, this contract would be part of our. And when we say contract, we're not saying, legalese,
Right.
several pages. We're just.
We'll call it
saying-
an agreement. That's
An
much
agreement.
less.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
because we want this process to be easy and work well for everybody.
Just remember, whatever you agree to matters
Yes.
Right.
legally as well as everything else.
Yes. Good point. Good point.
It does remind me of Spoon Bridge and Cherry, down in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Stands right next to the Walker.
Oh, yeah.
And that's taken me 20 or 30 years to get used to, but it's interesting. This thing looks, to pick up the word of the week, a little bit weird. And maybe changing the angle or the size or the way that timber is placed would open up a more friendly reception to it.
Yeah, really.
This is quite dramatic and looks a little traumatic, and I wonder if it could be placed differently, and the words placed at a different angle or a different, morph the design to save me the 30 years of getting used to the Spoon Bridge.
This is in the nature of commentary, not a withdrawal of your second, as I understand.
I'm commentarying on
Right.
Kay's motion.
And I would just throw in that, as Craig pointed out, seals and things, but kids climb on everything. And who's responsible if a kid climbs up, and if kids climb on things, kids fall off things.
Yep.
Who's
So
responsible for
one
that
needs to
type of
give
stuff?
some thought to what's going to be where they fall.
Or
Oh,
who's
really?
responsible for it, or pays for it
Yeah.
if someone gets hurt bad.
And in order to read the poem, you're probably going to have to get close enough to it to climb on it.
Oh, it'll be big. The
Right.
language, it'll be big language. And yeah, well, I sincerely, I genuinely appreciate both of those pieces of feedback about angle, just ways that this thing can be tweaked to just, you know, work a little bit more within the space, and not to get mired in it here, but of course, insurance and all of that kind of stuff is absolutely something that cannot be vague and, you know, is part of this process.
If the top is lower to the ground, the chances of some child falling a long distance reduces.
You know what? I don't think we should worry about that too much. We just built a beautiful connect between the park and the community, and kids are climbing all over that thing.
And I'm okay with that,
Yeah,
so
it's
long as
gorgeous.
when they fall, as they will,
Yes.
they're gonna come up with nothing more than a bruise.
But that's a geometric structure. This is going to be a log at an angle. It's different. This is an engineering project and it's not being addressed as such. It's going to be secured. I want to have Jim here and I want to hear about it.
Yes, exactly.
This
Yep.
is the president of Grand Marais who's paying for this, and the child who falls off of this, or the log falls on the child. I'm with children. I teach children, and I can tell you they will climb on it.
Yes.
They will
they'll climb on it.
repel themselves off of it.
And the
Yes.
question is the city gonna be on the hook for the injury, or will other people?
Yeah, the
My guess is there's nobody here wanting to raise their hands for it, but there might create, you know, that's an issue that needs to be focused on, that's all.
It's
Yes.
an active nuisance right now in my mind until I hear it's not.
Well, it's both attractive and a nuisance. So,
I mean, this is not to insult. I recognize the poetry and the concept. I like it. I'm worried about the technical engineering details and the liability that it places taxpayers at.
I genuinely do. I don't want to prolong it too much, and I know you all have other business. I genuinely really do appreciate that point. It's just, you know, when you determine a site for a project and you're really trying to be site specific with a public piece of art, the site really will dictate so much about how this actually looks and develops and lives in the ground. And Jim is absolutely a vital part of that. And you know, I can only speak here out of just like good faith, but you know, I just really want to say that none of these issues are, you know, I don't take them lightly, and nothing's going to happen under anybody's nose. You know, it's really, it's part of this work.
maybe you can design some rubber agates for the kids to fall on,
There you go.
or something similar.
Is it
Writing that down.
possible to come here? Did we listen to Jim? Can he come and present?
I don't know about, yeah, I guess I don't know really about what the protocols are for, you know, all of the parts of, you know, moving things forward.
Yeah, not a
Yeah.
proposal. Now, is there any further discussion from the members of the board with regard to the motion as made by our counselor and our other counselor?
So this recommendation would just go to the city council and then they, right?
This is a good question, Kay, but I
Yeah,
think
so I've
that you're
been-
acting on behalf of the city council.
Right, so I met with Mike Groff last week about this, and, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, but the read I got was if it is a temporary piece of land use,
Sure,
it's like the woodland caribou.
exactly.
Oh,
Look at that was a wonderful project. Nobody got hurt. It was
Like,
spectacular.
what was that?
The woodland caribou of Corey Steckelberg a few
Oh,
years
sure.
ago that, you know, lived on the land for a year or two and then went
Right.
away. And so because it's this temporary usage of the land,
Okay.
the park board is the authority to grant that
And,
temporary usage.
and his suggestion was that its location could be temporary, even though it was made to last longer.
Yeah,
I read that correctly.
Well, this might be more permanent.
yeah. So if it becomes permanent and gifted to the city, like the canoe or the bear, then the city council needs to
decide on that.
review and accept that gift.
With the understanding that if that wasn't its future, it then needs to be, you know, whatever the word would be, decommissioned, you know, deinstalled, I guess is the word.
Mhm.
So I
But-
gather it would be a friendly amendment to your motion that we recommend to the city council what you said. You know,
We don't have to.
Not if we're presuming it's a temporary installation,
okay,
Which
all right,
I
then
am.
never mind.
which we are,
I am.
yes.
Maybe that, can I insert, maybe the one caveat is with the land trust? Sounds like we need to get.
We'll reach out to them for
You
their
would reach out.
review. They're gonna be favorable
Yeah,
towards it,
I would say, yeah,
especially because it's temporary.
right. The temporary home.
Are you folks ready for a vote?
Well, I have a question about temporary. I mean, if this is gonna get put into a concrete base, what's temporary? When the wood rots away and it finally falls down? 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years? That's, to me, that's not really temporary. That's more permanent.
It's a good question about what that definition means. And between the work that Jim and I are hoping to do, we want to produce something that can be robust for 3 to 5 years. And it also feels like at that time, a lot more might be known about Boulder Park plans. It just kind of feels like that is a very appropriate number of years to call something semi-permanent or temporary. I've seen a lot of different definitions for the exact, it's a funny, it's an ongoing conversation in like public art and sculptural work. What is temporary and what is permanent? I just would hope that in working with something that is meant to last for a finite amount of time and then possibly be moved, that falls within this definition.
Well, for me, being on the city council, I think the city council members, whether it's temporary or 3 years, 5 years, I think the biggest thing crossing my mind right now is the appearance of it. I don't necessarily am fond of that appearance for that location. And I don't think I'll be the only one saying that, including a lot of the public. I would look at something more horizontal versus vertical, simply because of visibility and sight lines to the harbor, and placement of it's going to be a very important thing. How you said big letters, big words, it'd be nice to know how are these letters 10 inch, 8 inch, 9 inch, which that's going to dictate the circumference of the log you're using.
Yeah, I think the main goal for the letters is to be visible from a distance, and it needs to be proportional to the log. What are we talking about? Is that a 10 to 12 inch? We're talking about maybe 10 words that are, 10 to 12 inches. But I just have to stress too that I really need that to be flexible because of the found material and working with, the actual object itself. But, I absolutely want to take your point. And just your own personal preference and subjective, feelings about what a piece of public art looks like. I'm not clear, in different communities that the consensus around that varies, like how that forms. Do you need, a majority of the population of a town to approve, the color of a sculpture? Where does that line fall? As somebody who,
well, it's not going to come before the council if
We could,
It's kind of different.
honestly, we could.
I think that a conceptual, actual, here's what we're going to install, here's what it's going to look like. Oh, this is a concept, I get it. But when you come time to actually install this, what's it going to look like? I think the council's going to want to know what it's going to look like.
And we're going to want to give it to you with our recommendation.
But I'm just asking.
Yeah, I like that train of thought, Greg, that tonight's meeting is maybe the preliminary approval to consider Boulder Park as the location, with the idea that, okay, we've got that location, but now we need all the details.
I agree. Totally.
Am I correct that your motion assumed that they would be coming back to us with a specific proposal?
I didn't assume that in the motion, but I'm fine with what we're.
Okay, so we're going to, if I understand it correctly, if the second agrees, then we're going to amend the motion to say we approve the concept of working with Boulder Park and subject to final plans that will end up going to us or the city council.
Really good.
You okay with
That's your
that?
motion.
That sounds good.
So I can not like the angle and still approve your motion,
That's correct.
because it does seem a little,
It's not a done deal.
It's not,
Yeah, that's not.
You're
Sam,
not
we're not
voting
gonna
for
tell you
any
what
kind of
it's
angle.
you're not going for anything to be installed.
I've never seen anything like this around the lake.
Not yet.
Seen it naturally.
What it seems to me like is that Thor was the god of lightning, and he used to have bolts of lightning, and here we got this bolt of
Driftway.
And that is my feeling, like you, Craig, I'm going.
For the Scandinavian Riviera, that's perfect.
Yeah, well, look where.
Not sure you want to turn Jim Sonnerood loose on the.
Oh, yeah,
visiting- on the
you
visiting
do.
public.
Santa would have figured it out.
I do need to point out that we've almost reached 6 o'clock and we have more of an agenda to deal with. So if everybody's ready to vote on the final version of the motion as it has been made and discussed. All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye at the same time, please.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? I see none. It's 5-0.
Good job. Yeah, good
Thank
job.
you.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you all for
Thank you,
coming.
really. Thank you all so much.
You wander as we discuss the golf report of the city council report of the parks report, if you like.
Yeah, thanks.
Another day, but.
I'll just,
How about that next month?
I'll say goodbye here. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. See you. I'll be in touch.
And that is, we're gonna read this. I assume that if we have comments about it, we'll pass it to Dave and he will give it to the CEC.
Sure.
No, I mean,
And I'm assuming that the process now goes to the city council. Is
no,
that-
I'm just talking
No.
about, I'm just saying, we just got this stuff. And some of us are gonna read it and some of us may have
So
an
it comes
opinion or
back
an
here.
idea or a thought
Well,
and we'll pass it
I
to
would say
you
it
guys
goes,
through him.
goes to the CEC.
Yeah.
Park board passed a motion that Boulder Park's approved as a location in concept,
Preliminary approval.
preliminary approval,
Great.
Not
but the details need to be worked out. Comes back to the park board
Okay.
for final
Yes.
approval,
Back to park board, that's.
and then goes to the city council.
Okay,
the
good.
tires.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Very good.
I'm most
Thank you all.
impressed with the work we've all been making the poems for the whole Great Lakes work out together. That's going to be a very interesting intellectual and emotional task.
It will be.
I will step out of it.
See ya. Come again anytime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Isle Royal.
Thank you, Paul, for waiting.
What did I miss?
A lot.
Well, you put on a big massive golf tee. we were gonna
I
put up a
see,
golf-
I see somebody whose head looks like mine wishes to talk to us. Paul, time for the park report if you're up for it.
Golf.
Yeah, since we've dried out here, things have been going well. We've had a number of good days here in succession. So, previously with the all the rain stuff, we had our most unusual season start up since I've been here. So, anyway, we're a little bit behind. Last year was our best year on my record. It's been our best year, and then so we're trying to catch up to it. We're making a little bit of progress now, so hope things continue. Let's see some of the improvements we've been doing. We've got with our liquor license and stuff. We've got really nice selection of beverages and things like that. So people are very happy with that. The improvement we're going to be starting on probably next week. We've got this big pile of park driveway up. They moved the park driveway up here. We've got it right in a pot. And then we're going to try to turn that into some cart paths out on the course so that in the future, when we have these wet periods, that we can still put carts out there without damaging the course. So we've got, that's kind of on our agenda. We've got, I think maybe last time I was talking about our irrigation issues. We had a motor that had burnt out, and then, we started it, the spring was running, but it had gone again, it had failed again. So we had to order another motor. I'm in the process of, I'd stop by and talk to Mike just briefly. I told him I'm interested in pursuing a complete overview on this irrigation system. I think it needs to totally be redone. It's a really poor piece of infrastructure here, and like irrigation's pretty key. So I guess that what's in store there would be, I've been in contact with an architect. We're going to be looking at some different different methods here, some different ideas. I've already checked with the power company about getting three-phase power in here, which is one thing we need to modernize the system. So basically, it's just a lot of numbers and a lot of money, and so I think that the idea is to get all this information together in very complete manner, and then from there find the money. I'm thinking a grant, something like that. So I don't know if that's pie in the sky or whatever, but I think that's I'm going to try to focus on pursuing that because it's really needed here. I mean, we've got an irrigation system here that's we're functional with it, but it's tedious and it's not going to be sustainable. So I'm just trying to guard for the future on that. Like I said, cart pass. And the other thing, let's see, I've been in touch with a gal, Molly Larson. I think she's from town there, but to help us kind of get acquainted with doing some marketing things on social media. We started with a gal on that last year, and she moved. We knew that she was moving, but she's gone, and we need a little bit of assistance in getting that going. That's going to be probably a lot of work I'm guessing on my part as far as data entry and continuous entry on the social media stuff. But it's not hard to make an observation here that any new visitors that we have here that have, not known the courses here, just simply never came by. They really like the course. So we just want to get more people out here and more exposure. Let's see, our challenges this year we've had so far. I mean, things have been going good, but we've had some problems keeping enough people in the crew for as far as our clubhouse goes. And we're really lean right now. It's kind of hard to pursue getting help because we're this shorter and shorter. A lot of people go back to school and all that. Kind of August is kind of benchmark for all that. So we've got specs for next year, and we're kind of planting the seed for that already and seeing what we can do. We basically got 4 more weeks of leagues, then the playoff. Other things we're looking at doing out here. I mean, we've got our pizza situation and our hot dogs. That's basically our food products right now. We haven't really sold a lot of pizzas per se to date, but we've got to do a much better job as far as trying some methods for selling through on the products. And I think it's as simple as getting some good advertising pieces up on the 9th. We have to figure out something for the 9th hole, just getting something where people can look at it and order a pizza if they're thinking about it, and then it'll be ready for them when they get in, that sort of thing. And the other thing we were entertaining was just having some casual best ball tournaments with a pizza night, just kind of a buffet thing where we're just having, like everybody just pays $5 and, you just have a pizza buffet and, just get people acquainted that we have that service here. So those are some of the things we're looking at. Other than that, I guess that I can't think of anything that's unusual, other than that.
Well, how much water is there in the pond?
All of it,
So it's full?
right up to where it is.
2 years ago, it was going dry.
We had, I'd say right now we look like we're in pretty good shape. The weather's worrisome. But, we had a visiting beaver this spring, and he built a little dam up on the end of the reservoir there, and so the water came up a little bit, and so we draw from that water a little bit into our other pond. It's all basically part of the same reservoir that goes through the culvert and continues on to the stream through the ditch and all this stuff. I don't know the structure, the history of all that, but it's something that, you know, you can't just block off or anything. It's part of this stream. But anyway, we do have water kind of partitioned off there so that it just doesn't go to waste while it's in where we draw from in this holding pond situation. If the water gets too high, it'll just go out and, you know, down the culvert. So we're able to draw from that other pond, and we have a well that we can pump into that. We had to do that. We've done that a little bit now, and we've had to do that in the past where we've had where we couldn't use groundwater, and then we have to draw from the groundwater source, but we had to record how much well water we were putting into the holding area and not use more than that. But we aren't in that situation yet. It's all dry. The forecast is all dry, and it's agronomically, it's a little scary. Gives us a few challenges out here with trying to take care of some hot spots, but the golfers seem to like it. I mean, you know, the proof's in the numbers. They like the hot, dry weather. You know, I think our season's short, and that's kind of our thing about, you know, our whole challenge with revenues here. But anyway, as far as other things we're looking at in the future, as far as for improvements, investments, that sort of thing, we kind of like to get I think they call them splits or whatever. It's a heating air conditioning unit. Usually put them up in the higher part of your wall, you know, and you know, I think we'd like to look at maybe picking up one of those up. I think we could probably install it ourselves. I don't know, but I know all that stuff costs money, but basically what you end up with during, like, particularly the weather we had last week, and is you just have a place where nobody's going to want to spend any time. They're out here golfing, but they weren't spending any money inside or any time. I think if you're able to control the environment better, you know, people would want to hang out and have something to eat or have some beers or whatever, you know, just hang out. So that was
8 years, we never saw anything more than about 80 until this year, and it was 90 something. And if we have global warming being real, then I suppose one day we're going to have to buy an air conditioner, aren't we?
yeah. Well,
I don't know about the heat part.
yeah. I mean, I would say that things are definitely trending to more warm days. We have a shorter season, but we have all that same weather as other people have. It's just more condensed, you know. So,
Paul, I have one question about the marketing, and that is, I happened to run across, well, I was up there at the golf course, and two young women were getting ready to tee off, and they looked like they were from out of town. And I said, are you here for the Fisherman's Picnic? And they said, yes, and the golf. And that suggested to me that either your marketing was really good, or that it's an opportunity to think about what we might market in connection with the events that people already come to town for. Because
well,
some of them have golfers in the family that aren't as interested in whatever the other people came for. Maybe a little fisherman's picnic tournament, I don't know. But that's just something I wanted to plant for you to think about as you're doing the social media stuff.
yeah, I think that's my ideas for marketing. I mean, our big thing here, I mean, we aren't on the lake, but what we do have is we've got the town of Grand Marais, and you know, that's definitely what we want to associate off of and promote off of. And so, yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. I think there's, among golfers, you know, we've got conditions have been good here. We've kept the conditions pretty good, and so you get word of mouth is good. But we really enjoy it when we get new visitors, and they're kind of surprised that it's a good venue for them to golf. And so, yeah, we're just trying to figure out ways to market it, different things to do, maybe to bring in revenue and get better use of the facility.
Any other comments or questions from the members?
Just
You have
this,
anything, David?
this
Thank you,
year,
Paul.
Oh, Bob,
Oh,
I was gonna say, this year, our basement has been flooded for the first time ever, and our house has been too hot for the first time ever. And so planning irrigation downstream, looking for those possibilities is probably a good idea. I don't think this is gonna go away. I think we need to deal with extremes, so
Well, yeah. And you know, one good thing is that this system's really old. Nobody would ever design a system like this again nowadays. And you know, we're able to keep it functioning. I got some pre-equipment from another golf course friend of mine that's helped us out here. But you know, things you can hang by a string for so long, and then things get more challenging. And but yeah, it'd be great if we had I mean, irrigation obviously is a really key component to run in the golf course. So
And my kid has been golfing and he's not likely to get in trouble if he's golfing. So I can't do it, but I'm delighted that you have a
Well,
place.
if you read Sarri's novel. that's
You have a
not
place for
necessarily
him to
true.
play. It's a great thing.
yeah, it's a good game. It's a good game, and you can play it a long time. And
Yeah.
And if you live to be 80, you can play from the forward tees.
I changed that to 82.
You can do that at 82 also.
Just kidding.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Greg, do you have anything for the city council report?
The only thing we covered at the last meeting was, we talked about the fact that the downtown building was moved. I think there's some talk about moving it as one structure, but I think they took it apart and moved it as two pieces, because I actually saw it go up the road in half. I don't, how it's getting put together, the details right now, I don't know, I just know that it got moved. The only other thing on the agenda that took up a lot of the time was the 19 home proposed project between 6th and 7th Avenue above 3rd Street. We talked about that.
What's the project again?
19 individual row house type two-phase project.
Well, I saw something about that, and but
Yeah.
that's where is it? Far
It
northwest?
was above 3rd Street, between, at the top of 6th and 7th Avenue that are not finished streets. They're there. It's a piece block of land up in that area of town that used to be called, when I was a kid, Birchmount. That got tabled just simply because we progressed along talking about traffic movement and the condition of 3rd Street being basically half a street, not a full street, and what that might, what that extra traffic might do to that area. So I think we're looking at doing something with 3rd Street. There's no definite plans for it right now, but I think there was enough of a concern that I think is part of the whole overall, thrust of that conversation right now. So that'll be coming back again to us.
I assume there's some motivation on the part of the council to figure out some way to get the housing done if they can.
Yeah, there is, but access in and out of it is also important to a relatively quiet neighborhood right now. So there's a lot of questions. There were a lot of local residences who live in the area at the meeting.
Opposed?
Everyone. So my concern as somebody saying that listens to this is, it's like, there should have been more due diligence, I think, on somebody's part too.
Can they move ahead
Right.
with the project?
Not in my backyard.
Can they move ahead with,
Everybody, huh?
can they move ahead with the project without the street being redone?
Yeah,
It
if
is a
the
terrible
city, if the
street.
city says yes, but, there's quite a bit of concern about.
It's a narrow street.
Yeah, they're gonna do a one-way. 6 will be one way going up through and coming back down on 7. And it's all rock through there. There's no sewer water that can be established in that center section that I don't think the city's ever gonna want. There is sewer water available for the project on the end of 6th that will access, that'll be moved up and shot straight up between the two. So that can be done. Of course, that's all done at the developer's expense, but So anyway, it just got tabled simply because of some talk about Third Street traffic and concerns that the public had that they felt questions weren't answered significantly enough at the planning and zoning meeting, so they brought it. Of course, they showed up at the city council meeting and wanted those. So that's what happened.
Third Street will be used by some of us who live to the west of it. When we want to go anywhere to the east of it, because Second Street is blocked off by that trail, you know.
And
between 8th and 6th.
Second Street is actually below my house. It is a street only halfway through, and the other half is condemned.
Is condemned?
It's been condemned, and the property owners took over ownership of it.
Oh,
They didn't do it
that
all
far
over.
into the block on 6th where they have the private property signs?
Right.
Yeah.
That's why you can't walk through there anymore, because
Well,
it's
You
private
can
land.
walk through there.
Well, you
just
can,
can't
but it's
do it with
private
the
land right
snowmobile.
now, yeah. It's private land right now. It was always a trail. I mowed it for people to walk on, actually.
Yeah, I walked on it.
Which I don't do anymore. Yeah, so there's a lot of discussion about just, you know, all of that is still kind of out there, and I'm sure there'll be people at the next meeting too. So I mean, it's gonna be something that we all.
Well, if you need somebody to come to be for it, let me know.
What's going on above Lupin Lane where there's a road coming down from Center? And a lot of development up there. Doesn't connect to the part you're talking, but it's right.
At the end of seven,
Coming down from Highway 7. There's a lot of development above Lupin Lane, above the power plant.
Yeah.
what's going on with that?
Yeah.
Nothing right now. That was a proposed project by,
Yes, is it Skildum?
Mr. Skildum, yes. And that was gonna be a planned, individual houses with, there's a street, this, a city street, which he would have. I don't know what's happening to that, but that, yeah, it's another.
Anything else about the city?
No, that's
council?
about all that was on that, agenda. Those two things.
Parks report.
All right, Dan, thanks for your patience. And I'll be brief. So July was hot, dry, complete opposite of June. You know, I was sorry to say last month when I was reporting revenue numbers, I made a mistake. I was comparing like a pre-tax year-to-date total versus a tax out of year-to-date total from 23 to 24. And I just should have known better because what was it, 8% up or something I had boasted?
Yeah.
I was wrong. The 2024 hadn't taken the tax out yet. And so once we did the right math and came up with the right after-tax numbers, we're actually lagging by 1% after the end of July.
Yeah, so you said June revenue was down 3% versus
Mhm.
2023, and then July was down 1%.
Up
Or
1%.
up.
Yep, we just ran July and we were up 1%.
Okay.
It was like $12,000.
Right.
But yeah, on the composite, on the year-to-date, we're down 1%. So overall snapshot, yes, occupancy down. Blame it on the rain. Yeah. Fisherman's Picnic come and gone, thank goodness. We've had a great time in the park. No one got hurt, no major after-hour incidences of police activity. The fireworks were great. The crowds were pretty good downtown, I thought, and we're all breathing a sigh of relief. No breaks, though. We got busy weekends coming up. It's Rendezvous up at Grand Portage this weekend. It's Labor Day at the end of the month. It's Radio Waves the weekend after. So still a long run here. Yeah, another month or so of busy. So I can't thank my staff enough for staying dedicated, working hard. You know, now we're really grinding because we're getting tired, but we're going to stick to it and keep doing our best. The big frustration for me, at least, is the marina, the fuel pump. I just can't help but see a comparison here to Paul's irrigation system, where it's very old. It's 20-year-old. Well, 2021 is when that system was installed. Underground storage tanks. The pump at the dock is, you know, old mechanical computer wheels. Yeah.
Mechanical dispenser
Yeah.
versus,
Yeah.
So the pump is in the dispenser?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a suction pump in the
Yep.
dispenser.
Okay.
It takes a mechanical reset switch to like clear out all the wheels to zero. And on Saturday of picnic, that switch was acting up. It was sticking, it was binding. It's like a little electric motor makes it happen. And it was out of commission, and I was just very frustrated trying to, O'Day is a good supply company. They're they're a regional firm, but they have a Hermantown office.
Yeah.
So I was able to talk to a tech on Saturday and do some troubleshooting, but not anything that got us up and pumping.
Yeah.
And so we just had one big boat that came to town that needed fuel to get back to Duluth, and lucky we had some local folks that had a trailer that were able to accommodate this guest, or we ended up putting the boat on the trailer and brought him to the gas station to fill him up. But I feared the worst, because this is one of those, like, you come to town on a gas boat and we don't have gas, you're stuck in town. And luckily that wasn't the case. We didn't stack up a bunch of cruisers. O'Day came on yesterday, Monday, with the fix-it van and took everything apart and wiggled everything and got the switch to spin, and sort of showed me, even though the sticker says do not turn by hand, internal damage will result, he said, well, you can wiggle it a little. So we got it up and running. We've already had like 3 boats needing gas in the last day. So it was like good timing that we didn't suffer too terrible for our reputation and our ability to service these boats. But I'm really fed up with this old system.
You're still making mechanical pumps?
No.
So to convert this, are the tanks okay?
Yes, but they're approaching end of life. So they're like 25 years old in the ground,
They got
30 years, the
30-year expectancy.
industry standard. So So we're working with O'Day. The account manager's coming up next week. I'm going to walk them through like here's what we should plan for the future scenario: above ground tanks, which are easier, safer, new pump. And the big news, I think the best news, is that a new fuel dock on the east side of A dock, on the north house side of the marina. So it's the first thing you come across.
Oh.
Currently the fuel dock's like down at the end of the channel, it's whoever put that in wasn't
Right there.
yeah, it's like a
So
dead
that's-
end.
You can still use ADOC as you're using it now?
No, we're gonna flip, like the 2 big seasonal motorboats that are on
Yeah.
that side tying would move to the C dock
You're
fuel
not
dock.
adding another dock, you're just
No.
using docking.
Oh.
Yeah, and this has been a vision of mine for a long time. But it's, contingent on new pumps, new tanks, and
So where would that tank sit? Because you're moving.
we'll have to cite that with O'Day. There's setbacks for buildings and structures and
Yeah.
water, and it'll
How big it tanks.
probably around that NOAA building of,
Yeah.
Right.
lake level monitoring.
So
And how big a tank do you have right now?
Too big, 4,000 premium gas, 2,000 diesel. Way
What
too
do you
big,
want?
4 and 2.
1,000 a piece. Something to keep it fresh and easy. Because I order fuel like once a year.
And you get it,
You don't want to go dry.
But this has been a long time work in progress for me, and this pumping failing is finally the straw on the camel's back. And so we'll have more news on this in the future with price and design.
We call it a catalyst for change.
Thank you. I'll remember that. And this may be a good segue into the budget season, right? Because this is one of those $100,000 capital improvement expenses that will be built into our budget. And it's that time of year. I'll be working with the city council over the next several months on the 2025 budget. I think tonight is just an FYI, we're in the budget season. And my general practice here, as far as projecting revenue, I do like a plus 3% on the rates on the user fees, which kind of sets us up for that rate discussion in the next few months of, 3, 5, 10% adjustments. So just so you know, I'll be using my 3% multiplier on projected revenue. On the expense side, it's a lot more fixed expenses. Wages are, 3% or whatever the unions agreed to. Insurance, of course, always goes up, but a lot of the expense stuff is easier to project, and our capital funds will remain like heavily invested in, hundreds of thousands, or 160 some thousand is what we currently allocate each year into capital expenses. We do have that dedicated capital reserve fund within the general fund to purchase new fuel systems and trucks and equipment.
Irrigation systems.
That is not a part of the golf course, unfortunately, and really that's going to become a reckoning with the cost of new irrigation and the lack of dedicated capital improvements for the golf course. is one of those tough conversations we're gonna have to have. Because there's not a lot of grant money out there for golf courses, for municipal golf courses.
It occurs to me that I don't remember any marketing to city residents lately, and I think we ought to do that again. Gotta remind them, whether it goes out on their water bills or whatever, we gotta remind them that they can play at our course and they can do so because they're city residents for 15% less unless they're a member of the park board.
It's a good idea. I got a weekly update I can drop that into with the newsletter, like a weekly newsletter to anyone who subscribes. And then just the kind of last bit of
Hang on,
fun.
though, what, just,
Oh, sorry.
so what's timeline for the gas leaks?
You know, in an ideal world, Matthew, like next spring
Yeah.
or this off-season cycle.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I mean,
Like within a
also
year.
That's, removal.
Yes.
and Same company doing both removing it and stuff.
We'll have to see how the numbers flush out, because if it's like a X amount, it goes to bid. If it's under 100,000, I don't have them right on top of my head, but there's kind of a public bidding process with, projects like this.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we'll definitely work the numbers and do it as we
I
need
mean,
to.
the sooner the better. for them.
Yeah,
Next,
yeah.
by next summer.
And so we'll know a lot about the numbers and the design, I would think, in the next month or two. And then that'll influence my decision to like run the tanks dry versus fill them in the fall, because best practice says fill them up in the fall so they don't condense water in the wintertime. But if we're like gonna be switching over, like, we got a lot to deal with.
Do you need permission from whoever runs the coast to put gas in or out, or
Not so
do you
much.
have to mitigate any of the ground around
If
that?
there's contamination in the
Yeah.
tanks out.
Yeah.
If there's contamination, I think the tanks out, which you usually see, then they have to report. We have to report.
But
that.
it doesn't affect what you want to do.
Hopefully not, but we'll work with the proper agencies. So we get on the gas.
Yeah, thanks.
Fuel. Oh, and then, the little bit of silver lining there was the diesel pump still worked. And I had several diesel sailboats that I was able to put
Nice.
6 gallons in, and then this big diesel Tierra showed up, and, Willie Run came back to town, and we put 200 gallons on him, and I wasn't totally upset.
It's just gas.
Yeah. But yeah, and I'm happy to say it's back and working for now. Last bit of fun, I would like to purchase a ping pong table for the rec
Yes.
hall. I don't even need a motion. I just wanted to have an FYI and just a general public awareness campaign that we've got a seasonal resident in the park. Tragic, well, I don't know about the tragedy yet, but he was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at a young age. And guess what's the best for Parkinson?
Ping pong?
Ping pong. Yeah,
Great.
like the whole,
Wow.
I suppose paddleball would be good too.
pickleball and twisters
Pickleball.
too.
So how much is this gonna
Boxing,
cost?
they do a lot
Less
of
than
boxing.
100,000.
Yep, with Parkinson's.
Oh.
As you get a chance to read
But it would be
this,
inside,
and you have
right?
comments,
Yeah, it'd be in the
remember to
rec
let
hall.
Dave know to pass them on or whoever
Because
wants to
the
hear them.
library has the outside one.
Yeah,
Now, we have 2 items left on the agenda, old business and new business. I'm not aware of it.
I just want to bring up a little new business, casually talking about the mixed use down at the new boat launch, because it's been
It's done already.
tremendous at the new boat launch
Oh, okay.
/ swimming beach.
Yeah.
Oh, slash swing beach, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to talk about it so we're aware that when the water was freakishly warm last week and the temperatures were abnormally high, the beach was full of people swimming with inflatable ducky toys and frisbees and stand-up paddleboards and kayaks and fishing boats zooming
People
by.
jumping off the walking
People
ramp.
jumping off
Right
the
into the
brick
boats
wall
are.
and swimming across the boat launch channel to the beach. And I was just like,
So it sounds like we need to have a lot of signs that says swimming
Well,
at your own risk, no
I guess-
lifeguards.
Maybe,
No.
maybe on those docks, like you could probably like do a no diving kind of thing.
I think,
I mean, people are gonna swim, we're not gonna stop that, but I
yeah,
know people are diving in, and the dock is a fun thing to dive in. I don't know,
It is.
I don't know what the depth is at the end of that dock, but it's gotta be at least 10 feet to be something you wanna be diving in.
yeah, I have been really just what kind of sign should I put down there and where, and will it be
I have a
effective?
proposal
Swim at your risk.
to start this discussion, and that is, you want a sign that says swimming at your own risk, Usually the water is really cold.
Mhm.
If it's warm enough for you to be there, remember there are no lifeguards and you're still swimming at your own risk and there's absolutely no diving.
But even so, if we're providing a boat launch for people in and out, we should be not saying that
You're kind of in the way
you
of
can
that.
jump
Yeah.
off the dock.
It should be
and
no
swim.
swimming
It should be
past
no
this
swimming
point.
from-
Absolutely,
Just no
absolutely.
swimming, not at your own risk. It's like,
Yeah,
no,
right.
because if somebody
Yeah.
swims out into there and a boater comes in
Yeah.
and it's later in the evening or
Yeah.
something.
You wanna keep them off the
Or is the
docks, gotta
message to
establish
boaters
a-
like, look out for
area.
swimmers?
No. I mean,
I even
because the
thought,
boater can't see a swimmer. for
I
the
know,
most part.
I even went so far as to think of like those, like the suburban beaches where they put out buoy floats in a box.
Yeah.
To say like, here's your swimming hole.
As soon as you do that,
The water got cold.
then you're taking more responsibility for their safety.
Yeah.
I rather think a barrier that says, don't come in here because you're gonna get run over by a boat is
Yeah.
better than an enclosure.
I agree. So like no swimming past this point, and it's, to the
Boat launch.
northwest of the
Exactly.
boat
Boat
launch.
launch only or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I was literally less concerned about the kids on the docks and on the ramp and the truck deal, because you see them and you tell them to move, than the swimmer in the water swimming between the sidewalk and the beach that the boater is not expecting and can't see.
Yeah, I mean, you can't.
Right, they pull in.
They're
they
looking
back
at
up
where
forward.
they're gonna land their boat and stuff and
Yeah.
that's really.
You don't want any kind of formal action by us on that subject?
No, it's
No,
really-
No, but
just
all
tell
your
us what
good
you've done.
ideas. Yeah,
When you've done it.
yeah.
What
So I
about
was thinking-
swimming off the lighthouse? People do that.
Yeah,
They swim off the lighthouse.
Yeah. Army Corps owns that. The
That's your
ladders
problem.
have been ripped off by the ice. We put out a emergency get out of the water ladder from our collection. Yeah. But it's.
Hearing no further business, I'm about to declare adjournment.
I think that log sticks up too high.
They put that over the lake and get a lot of you.
Hey, I gotta say this,
Dive at your
the
own risk.
Tombolo Timber Cautionary Caucus recommends that timber be horizontal.
Yeah.
I'm not prepared to buy into
I
any
also, I also think a gang of artists coming to a committee like this should have a much better formulated plan and a plan of action, and not just have artistic free association at your expense. Because I thought a lot of the first hour today was a waste of time. And I got time to burn. I mean, I'm an old guy and I'm retired.
Yeah, and you haven't even read the damn thing.
There was a lot of
You
chatter,
could've.
a lot of chatter that could have been done and honed down beforehand, and then sent back.
I read it, and I get it, but first impressions, people are gonna see this. And when I sat down and you slid this over to me, I looked at it and I thought,
They're gonna crawl on it.
what will it look like? Well, there it is. And I'm thinking,
Forget it.
I have a tough time selling that to 10 people.
And Sonor's kid is gonna
I
climb
mean,
right up that
the
thing.
concept I get,
But he's not looking.
I think
Yeah,
that if it was more horizontal with driftwood type pieces.
Like this rather than like
I
that.
mean,
Anything.
people can walk by and read it. Placement is gonna be key, where, in that area.
Yeah,
So I mean, getting back to.
I appreciate you guys' patience on this. The CEC, like I think preface this process is newer, and we're struggling through it, and yes, it's.
Now that we're adjourned, I want to ask where these fancy cameras are.
Are we right in front of you?
We haven't been adjourned yet.
Oh, you
That's-
said we're
Those are
adjourned.
cameras?
Are we adjourned?
Wow,
Are we adjourned?
Not yet.
that's amazing.
I didn't think we were adjourned, Steve, but I can adjourn us now.
All right, bingo.